Do you feel that precise, needle-thin shiver when the heart recognizes a place your body has never been? It's the sudden tug that arrives without warning, the smell of damp wood that makes your lungs smile, an old melody that sets your blood's tempo, the face of a stranger that, in a blink, becomes decades of longing. Science files all this under déjà vu, yet if you listen closely, you'll sense something bigger whispering behind the feeling. Memories that slipped out of the vault of forgetting to remind you who you truly are, where you came from, and why you accepted one more turn on the wheel of existence. When that idea clicks, fear of the end begins to crack, and each daily problem takes on the color of an invitation, as if the universe, in a secret note, said, "Hey, try again. You've practiced this before." The oldest clue to this coming and going may be etched in clay. 4,000-year-old Sumerian tablets tell of priests who, in trance, described lives as peasants, artisans, even merchants, from a time when the rivers were of bronze. Centuries later, Egyptian papyri narrated generals who recognized the strategies of foreign armies they had never faced. Among Druids, boys amazed elders by reciting entire genealogies of dead clans. In the 17th century Amazon, Portuguese missionaries recorded indigenous children who drew, with charcoal and banana leaves, accurate maps of the Aegean Sea. Each story alone sounds like legend. Together, they form a breadcrumb trail pointing to a single beacon. Consciousness travels, learns, returns, forgets, and still leaves intuitive marks, so it won't lose itself. The question is why we aren't born remembering everything. Imagine playing a game already knowing where every trap lies. You'd win easily, but learn nothing. The veil of forgetting works as a spoiler regulator. It wipes the slate, but doesn't erase it all, leaving subtle reflections that resurface when a scene needs them. That's why someone masters the violin in months or feels genuine panic at a cliff with no history of falls, gentle alarms or sharp shortcuts steering the plot. And the ego, that noisy co-pilot, acts as an insulating layer. It protects, suffers, tests, until, cracked, it gives way to the wise part that sees signals beyond the obvious. There's no hidden punishment. There's a chance to write new answers, free from old vendettas or automatic gratitudes. Dolores Cannon spent more than 40 years crossing that veil with clinical safety. In deep regression sessions, patients reported extinct languages, geographic details, later confirmed in libraries, domestic specifics only archaeologists knew. The highlight, however, lay in the present bodies. Phobias dwindled, idiopathic pains vanished. Severe allergies eased after traumatic memories surfaced and were reframed. The past, seen without drama, returns to the nervous system the piece ignorance steals. It's like finding the right piece and finally tightening the squeaky furniture. If that makes sense, supporting this channel with a tap on subscribe helps spread these findings. Together, our voices keep the research alive and reach those missing that piece on their own shelf. Look at your daily life through this lens. The neighbor who blasts loud music might be an old ally training your patience. The demanding boss may embody a discipline master you dodged in another era. That lightning romance ending in weeks could be a quick rescue pact, mission accomplished, path clear. Everything remains real, yet nothing lacks purpose. Each choice becomes a springboard to wider versions of yourself, and you need neither a white robe nor pricey incense. Taking a deep breath before reacting to a harsh comment already rewrites karmic lines. Smiling genuinely at the person serving your coffee, paying a late bill without self-pity, admitting a mistake without hunting for blame. Micro-gestures signed by the version of you who knows the next lesson starts the moment the bell rings. You might ask, how do I tell intuition from fantasy? Start tracking repeated patterns. Does a symbol circle your dreams? A number insist on the clock? A feeling surge every time you smell a certain scent? Write it all down. The rational mind doubts today, but 3 months of notes trace constellations the scattered eye can't see. If a memory comes too strong, talk to it. What are you trying to teach me? Respect limits. Don't force images. Consciousness doesn't violate timing. Some insights appear in seconds. Others take years of morning silence, dishwashing, or headphoneless walks. The key is not to file the clue away before examining it. At this point, light workers enter the scene. Don't picture ethereal beings floating on clouds. Think of people who trade sleep hours to comfort friends in crisis, who defend environmental causes with no audience, who crack a joke to break tension after a tough diagnosis. They're souls who remember, even without detail, that we're interconnected. When you like, share, or comment on something that brings relief, you join that frequency. It may seem simple, but it works like a seed that becomes a forest across many incarnations. In the end, what we call death reveals itself as fluid continuity. Near-death testimonies describe a luminous tunnel, blue plains, voices that welcome without judgment. Life review unfolds in an overwhelming sensory panorama. We feel the joy we caused and the pain we inflicted. No filters, no excuses. Then rises the desire to balance the scales, and new plots start being woven in the planning rooms. There, perhaps you and I, readers of different eras, arrange this meeting to reignite some essential memory. Who can say otherwise? For now, practice the most decisive exercise. Wake up tomorrow, inhale slowly, and ask, "What lesson did my soul choose for today?" Then walk attentively. The answer may come in an annoying honk, a discreet smile, the fatigue that forces you to ask whether you're listening to your own body. When you close your eyes at night, be grateful even for stumbles. They're disguised masters, honing skills that will travel with you far beyond the last breath. If this content sparked that little flame in your heart, leave a note in the comments. Tell us the strangest sign you've experienced. You light a lantern for those who come next, and together we confirm, day after day, that the journey doesn't end where the ego fears, but expands where consciousness dares to look. Have you noticed how reincarnation stories hide in unlikely corners, crossing eras and languages like an underground river that sometimes bursts into luminous springs? There's the Tibetan monk who, still a child, pointed the exact path to the monastery where he said he'd been a librarian 3 centuries earlier, describing cracks in the stone only an old caretaker would notice. There's the nurse from Recife, who, under hypnosis, detailed Portuguese naval battles with 16th century precision, later finding every wound she mentioned, logged in ship reports, sleeping in Lisbon archives. And perhaps there's you, recalling a strange feeling the first time you held a musical instrument, as if fingers, tendons, and nerves were greeting each other after a long journey. These tales can demolish walls, inviting us to see life as a chapter in a grand saga where no one is an extra. Even the pastel vendor on the corner might once have been a meticulous artisan in an Etruscan citadel, polishing patience grain by grain. Tracing the chronological thread shows that belief in return didn't arise with modern gurus or storefront esotericism. It permeates Vedic myths, Gnostic currents, Quranic passages speaking of being reborn 70 times until the heart learns, Neoplatonic essays, Talmudic comments on Gilgul Neshamot. In all these cultures, the fundamental idea is the same. Consciousness doesn't extinguish. It merely changes outfits to keep studying itself. What's fascinating is that, even where official doctrines tried to suffocate the theme, it resurfaced in popular tales, like a stubborn plant cracking concrete. In medieval France, peasants told of children sent back to fix mistakes. In feudal Japanese villages, fishermen recounted dreams of past storms that taught them to read the sea. The skeptical mind may dismiss it all as folklore, but the near-obedient repetition of patterns hints at an invisible literacy spanning millennia. Dolores Cannon stepped into this terrain armed with a recorder, infinite patience, and a researcher's spirit. In deep trance, her volunteers unwound lives in torrents, but she wasn't satisfied with raw emotion. She checked nautical charts, regional slang, baptism records. When a woman from Oklahoma, for instance, described Minoan ceremonies with vivid color details, Cannon sent the tape to archaeologists at the University of Athens who, astonished, confirmed pigments newly discovered on Knossos murals. Out of every 10 meticulous accounts, at least 7 matched verified data. Yet the most remarkable aspect wasn't the historical accuracy, but the clinical outcome. Decades-long migraines dissolved, insomnia retreated, ancestral guilt melted into tears of relief. The body, finally heard, silenced its alarm. It was as if the limbic system said, "Thank you, now I can file the trauma away." From there sprouts an instinctive understanding that the soul is both diligent student and demanding teacher. No one regresses to a lower point. Every incarnation adds a layer of moral texture. A life centered on brute power is often followed by a humble trajectory to balance the scales. The rigidity of a relentless judge may reincarnate in a body whose physical limitation teaches inner flexibility. The logic is circular, yet ascending, like a spiral that never returns to the exact same point. Within this process, free will acts as fresh paint on a primed canvas. It is real, but blends with hues already applied. Thus, the courage of a child facing bullying may echo warriors who once confronted armies, while the uncertainty of an executive at the peak of his career reveals humility lessons he postponed when he was a severe monarch. The lesson repeats until the heart agrees to sing in another key. All this works only thanks to the veil of forgetting, a nearly translucent fabric that covers explicit memories, yet allows fragments to pass like sparks. Without it, the stage would be dominated by the temptation to relive old grudges or seek old favors. Imagine walking down your office corridor and recognizing your foe from 1,000 years ago. Neutrality would be impossible. The script would become a courtroom of vengeance. The veil, therefore, acts as pedagogical silence. Even so, it's not always airtight. In trance states, lucid dreams, or deep meditation, flashes slip through the stitching. Science is beginning to measure these phenomena with functional MRI machines that register unusual activations in the hippocampus when patients report before memories. Nothing conclusive yet, but enough to open research grants at universities that once turned up their noses. Meanwhile, in real life, the one lived between bills and supermarket lines, these concepts translate into small daily experiments. When you choose not to strike back at an insult, you may be ending an ancestral cycle of aggression. When you genuinely praise someone who sparks envy, you carve a brand new path where competition once ruled. It seems tiny, yet each micro-gesture tweaks the subtle mathematics of existence, freeing energy that would be lost to friction so it can feed larger purposes. Lightworkers know this in their bones. They don't wait for a stage, media coverage, or explicit gratitude. They understand that smiling at a distracted cashier, holding the elevator door, or listening to a friend's 2 a.m. vent is as valuable as any transcendental lecture. If something hums inside you while reading this, remember that the universe's algorithm works much like the videos. One tap on subscribe expands the message's reach, and every new subscriber becomes a spark lighting another corner of the planet. When departure time comes, consciousness is swept into an unconditional love that defies earthly analogy. Near-death experiences describe fields of light where thoughts turn into landscapes and no one points accusatory fingers. There is only clear, direct, almost mathematical understanding. The life review isn't judgment, but a master class in interdependence. You feel in your own chest every laugh you sparked, every tear you caused, every seed of hope or fear you planted. Then comes an invitation to rewrite the next chapter. Some souls board the train of rebirth right away. Others rest in subtler planes, study, or help embodied relatives as invisible mentors. No one stands still. The dance is continuous, orchestrated by laws as exact as those governing planetary orbits. Bringing all this grandeur into everyday life can start with simple rituals. Upon waking, ask yourself, which virtue am I being invited to practice today? Observe yourself between coffee and the first task, noting every flicker of impatience. When you spot a familiar trigger, jealousy, irritation, fear, stop, breathe, and speak within. I've lived this scene, but I can choose a new line. Write in a notebook every time you manage to react differently. Week by week, you'll see patterns dissolve like ice in the sun. That journal becomes a bridge between subconscious and conscious self, letting deep memories rise without trauma. If you want to go further, explore guided regression with reputable professionals. Read works like Many Lives, Many Masters, or Quantum Healing, and compare experiences. An experiment that improves kindness, sleep, digestion, and joy has a high chance of touching the soul's root. Finally, remember, no one walks this path alone. Each time you share an insight or personal story, you raise a beacon for the next traveler. So, before closing this page, tell us below if any unexpected skill or inexplicable fear has ever made you suspect past lives. Your story may be the spark that frees someone from the weight of an old symptom. And when the next video appears on your screen, it might be the exact piece missing from the mosaic of your own return. When the plot seems to hit its climax and everything announces farewell, the soul discovers that the word end doesn't exist in the cosmic dictionary. Only a comma pushing the narrative into a new paragraph. The last breath opens a passage into a warm clarity, dense as summer mist, where thoughts become colors and emotions condense into scenes. There, no external force sets up a tribunal. Your own heart invites itself to watch the full projection of the life just finished. Every gesture returns as a perfect sensory wave. The laugh you caused rings in your ears with amplified sweetness. The tear you triggered now runs down your own face. This immersion neither punishes nor absolves. It simply reveals the precise engineering of interdependence. From that point, mentors, consciousnesses that sustain unbroken compassion, show possibilities for the next script. Nothing is imposed. The freshly awakened lucidity almost always chooses to mend what was left askew, nurture talents that barely sprouted, or expand seeds of kindness that had begun to show life. Then begins the phase many mystics call the planning rooms. Picture immense panels of light where timelines move like flexible tracks: family, birthplace, physical health, natural talents, decisive encounters, synchronicities. Everything is analyzed like mosaic pieces meant to create the most harmonious image possible, not only for the individual, but for the network of souls they'll bond with. Here we understand why certain people enter our story with almost cinematic intensity and then disappear once the mutually agreed lesson is fulfilled. It's also on this stage that entire groups choose to descend together in turbulent eras, offering shoulders of collective support. Community leaders, scientists who elevate healing paradigms, artists who open portals of consciousness through beauty. These collectives are the seed of what we call light workers. Light workers don't always sport visible auras or spectacular talents. Many pass unnoticed, trading headline glamour for quiet revolutions. The psychologist who starts a free listening circle on Saturday afternoons, the grandfather teaching grandkids to tend the garden while speaking about respecting bees, the delivery driver who hands out forgotten children's books from his garage. Some arrive in this life with fragile health precisely to radiate hope through overcoming. Others carry early losses that, once embraced, become steps toward universal empathy. The mission isn't to save the planet in one heroic act, but to tune personal frequency to the tone of cooperation. Each time you choose to explain instead of shout, to thank instead of demand, you contribute to the silent symphony sustaining collective evolution. If this video resonates in your chest, a simple gesture, commenting on what made sense, widens the reach of that frequency, guiding those still feeling their way in the dark. But where does free will fit? It remains absolute, though framed by context chosen before arrival. Think of a board game. Terrain, pieces, and challenge cards are set, but each move is a living decision. If someone is born with creative drive yet little support, they can waste talent in complaints or turn limitation into a genius lab. The sum of choices generates new potentials, opening forks not on the original map. That's divine creativity working from the inside out. Thus, no soul is stuck in eternal damnation. Yesterday's pride becomes today's humility lesson. Chronic fear transmutes into generous courage when we accept the teaching hidden in difficulty. Recognizing this dynamic daily calls for gentle attention practice. Wake up asking, which virtue does my script suggest developing today? Over breakfast, note first emotions: irritation, anxiety, lightness. They're dashboard indicators like a flashing car light. If impatience appears, take a micro pause of 3 long breaths, letting the body know no immediate danger exists. This interrupts the chemical cycle that could spin the whole day at frantic speed. During the day, Treat every annoyance as a disguised mentor. The inner algorithm, seeing your willingness to learn, eases test intensity or sometimes speeds rewards in the form of synchronicities. The opportunity that appears at the exact minute, the unexpected advice through a stranger. At night, practice a miniature life review. Lying down with soft light, replay the day in calm sequence, where you offered comfort, where irritation ruled, where you acted in line with a higher purpose. Don't judge. Observe like a curious researcher. Then sincerely thank the challenging scenes and visualize a wiser response to a similar situation. This mental rehearsal engraves a new neural path that, with repetition, replaces reactive patterns. Many call this turning karma into dharma. Energy once trapped in reaction now fuels conscious action. External tools can help, but nothing replaces inner discipline. Well-guided regression techniques, past life therapy, shamanic journeys, or deep meditation open doors to memories that explain current blocks. Still, seek reputable professionals and keep discernment. Spiritual truth that doesn't improve character, humor, or compassion becomes sterile spectacle. Books like Quantum Self-Healing, Conversations with God, or The Holographic Universe serve as theoretical compasses, but the real test remains in traffic at the checkout line, in self-talk when you miss your own goals. Some ask whether spiritual ascension means abandoning earthly pleasures, living on light, or chanting mantras all day. In practice, ascending is becoming radically human, without fear's chains. It's savoring a simple meal with gratitude beyond taste, working with excellence without being enslaved to results, crying over a loss without falling into despair, smiling at another's success without envy. When this state begins to stabilize, the outer world responds. Toxic relationships dissolve naturally. Aligned opportunities arrive without excessive effort. The body shows vitality, coherent with a peaceful mind. Bills, meetings, lines, disagreements still exist, but everything gains the texture of a canvas where invisible brushes paint nuances of love in motion. If you wonder whether you're progressing or spinning in circles, track simple metrics. Do you sleep better than a year ago? Forgive faster? Recover hope sooner? Help someone without expecting recognition? These shifts, subtle at first, signal a leap of consciousness greater than any paranormal spectacle. That's how expansion is measured. Less drama, more responsibility, less criticism, more sincere questioning, less urgency to be accepted, more commitment to accepting yourself and others. If any part of this conversation cleared new space in your perception, describe in the comments the insight that touched you most. Your sharing may be the step another traveler needs to understand their own journey. And if you'd like to keep receiving reminders that reality is far wider than the screen suggests, subscribing to the channel works like a silent pact among seekers. When new content is born, you'll be among the first to get the invitation. Until then, celebrate each breath as living proof that the story never ends. It rewrites itself, page after page, until love becomes the dominant ink on every margin of the soul's eternal book.